Good afternoon, everyone. It's glad to be here. And we think we have met last night, right? A big gathering. Yes, it's wonderful. Okay. I'm Pengpeng Xu from the Central South University of Technology, the same university with Feng Wang. Yeah, I was her co-supervisor. Yeah. So I got my PhD from the University of Hong Kong. I still remember the first meeting with my supervisor. I come from the mainland China, right? So I speak English in mainland China style. But my supervisor is a local. He speaks English in Hong Kong style. We couldn't understand each other in the beginning, but things changed. Okay, so my speaking is not so good. So I guess, right? So if you have any problems or any questions, you can send me an email. Okay, I will respond to you. Okay. So this topic is a new research of my research team. I get the position 2 years ago, so I need to expand the research directions, right? I actually during my PhD study, I'm good at statistical modeling. It's about the next lecture. It talks about the crash prediction model, right? So I need to expand my research, but how? The answer is collaboration. I have a senior sister. Professor Pei Xin from the Tsinghua University. We ever in the same lab with the same supervisor. So she go back to work in Tsinghua University, and I go back to the SUT. And she got a big project, collect some data. Yeah, the data is very good, but the data is also have some problems. So my task is to how to use the data to publish a paper. You know, so when I come back to the SUT, the data is already here. So my task is to, you look at the data, you come up with the idea, and you have to write a paper to the top journal. Yes, this is my task. So I conduct a literature review and look at our data, and we developed a fatigue driving detection system. So this is the topic I will talk about it. So I will talk step by step. The first is why we need a system to detect driver fatigue, right? Because the problem is that the fatigue driving is the major contributor to crash, as we all know, right? So the second question is for the future. We have autonomous vehicles on the road, right? So the L3 or L2 autonomous vehicles, the vehicle still need to detect the driver's state for what? For the takeover purpose, right? For the emergency actions, the vehicle needs to understand the state of the drivers. So monitoring driver fatigue state is important. It's very important. So the next question is, what factors affect the fatigue driving, right? So the long time driving a long time, and also the boring driving, right? Together with the frequency steering, braking, makes driver more likely to be fatigued, right? Also the drive at night, right? Also if you don't have a good sleep last night and you drive, and you will be more likely to be fatigued. So remember these factors. That's because this factor is useful for us to collect the data. So we know the fatigue. The next question is how to calibrate the fatigue driving, right? We have the why depending on the variable. It's our focus. So the next step is how to calibrate. So there are three methods. The first method is to use the psychological data, because fatigue is a psychological phenomenon, right? So we use the EEG, our brain wave. The EEG can capture the signal information from our brain wave, and we use the EEG as the benchmark for fatigue driving, right? So the second method is that if we fatigue, right, we will have some observed behavior such as yawning, eyes closing, right, and also nodding. So we use this observed behavior to determine whether a driver has been fatigued or not. It's much easier, right? Okay, the third method is based on the well-known KSS scale. This method, this scale measures the subjective levels of sleepiness at a particular time of the day, right? But remember that this method is a self-report with 9-point scales, with point 1 is extremely alert. So are you fatigued? Give me a number. So the number is 1. No, I'm not. I'm extremely alert. So number 9 is yes, I'm very sleepy. So you ask the drivers, are you sleepy? Are you fatigued? Yes, give me a number. I told you a number, then you record the number. Use the number to calibrate the fatigue, right? It's a third method. Typically we have 3 methods. Okay, we have the dependent variable, and the next question is how to select the features. We need to detect the fatigue. Then how to select the features? It's important, right? So the first also is the EEG, right? Because we use the EEG to calibrate the fatigue. So the EEG shows the golden standard for this fatigue driving. But in reality, the EEG-based fatigue detection system was not used in real-world applications because you see the device. You see the device. I think you use the driving simulator, right? You see the device. The device is very uncomfortable and convenience to use. So it's rarely used in real-world applications, right? It's the EEG. Another is about the ECG, because if we feel fatigue, right, there is a grade of slowdown of our heart activity, right? This can be reflected by the EEG signals. Use the EEG signals, we can derive the heart rate variations, right? 2 features. However, the role played the ECG signals is remain unclear. Why? Because the accuracy rate ranges a wide range from about 40% to 90% from the review paper in AP. So this is ECG. Next, with the advancement of the computer vision, okay, because the fatigue is also observed by some behavior such as nodding, yawning, right? So we can also capture the pictures from the videos in the vehicle, right? And use some computer vision technologies to derive some features such as the eye aspect ratio, right? The blink rate, and also the famous indicator, the focus, the percentage of eyelid closure over time. This is a common indicator. This indicator is very common use in commercial products, right? So the first step, is to identify the face landmarks. We have 68 landmarks, right? Use these landmarks, we can derive these indicators. It's much easier, right? It's the procedure. Okay. So in order to the eye, we also have the mouth and hand. Similarly, with the face landmark points, right? We can calculate 2 features. One is about the nodding. Yes, you just calculate the distance of the point 30 here, and you can justify whether the driver is nodding. Similarly, if we extract the landmark points of the mouse, and you can use also the distance, right? Longitudinal, use the distance to justify whether the driver is yawning, right? Because, right? Okay, it's 2 features from the video imaging. Okay, the next is the vehicle features, because if the driver very fatigued, right, his control on the vehicle will be weak, right? Result some anomaly in vehicle operations. So we also need some information from the vehicle. For example, the vehicle law, the vehicle position, the vehicle speed, the vehicle acceleration, land departure, also the brake force, right? The yaw rate, also the grip stress. We use this information to capture whether the driver feel fatigue. This is also the second type, the vehicle features. As the next, and we have the temper, right? We have the temper because what's the time here? If it's midnight, right? It's much more likely to be fatigue. And we also know how much time have you drive, right? A longer drive time, and more likely you will be fatigued. And it's about the test rest hours. So how many hours do you rest, do you sleep after drinking, right? In our party after drinking, how many hours do you? How was the sleep quality? All these matters should be related to the fatigue driving. And lastly is the individual features. Individual features because driver with different age, with different gender, with different driving experience, also different driving style, also health conditions. All these factors may affect driver fatigue pattern, right? This is the X, this is the Y. Remember, actually it's the model, right? We have the Y. Y is how to calibrate the fatigue. We have three methods, and the X is which features can we be used to predict the fatigue. Okay, I think it's very clear, right? Okay, let's move on. The third stage is the experimental design. How to collect the data, right? In reality, it's not impossible to collect all the data we need. Because what? Because money, right? Because it takes time. It needs a lot of money to conduct experimental design. Professor Nico is good at the driving simulator, right? I think he has the same feeling about the driving simulator experiment. So one commonly used is a driving simulator experiment, right? So in one paper published in ARMA, Zhang designed a driving simulator to study the driver fatigue. So how they design the experiment? So they include 27 male drivers, the professional driver, taxi drivers, for the night shift taxi drivers. They have been driving more than 11 hours during the night, and then at the next day of the morning, they come to the lab to conduct the experiment. So, okay. So the simulation rule is the rules. You see this driving scenario. It's a circle and it's very boring. You need to drive on this scenario 6 rounds, and you have to keep constant driving speed. Try your best to keep the constant driving speed, right? At this time, how to calibrate the fatigue? The drivers were asked to self-report the HSS value. For example, are you fatigued? Give me a number. Number 5, okay. 10 minutes later, are you fatigued? Give me a number. Oh, it's 7. Like this. Okay, like this. So the whole experiment takes about 1 hour. Right? 1 hour. So you have to ask the drivers about 6 times. How you feel? Are you fatigued? Regularly, right? Regularly. So based on this data set, I think the fatigue pattern based on the driving simulator should be different from the real world data, right? So the second is about use the naturalistic driving studies. You know, the NDS is very famous, right? It's very famous over the world. So the NDS study also similar. One paper is also from the Zhang. This Zhang is different from that Zhang, right? It's another paper. But Mr. Zhang designed his experiment by NDS. How? They also recruited about 15 taxi drivers. They asked the driver to drive their car on highway. The total trip is about 6 hours. 6 hours, right? Okay. Remember that how to calibrate the fatigue. 2 investigators stayed back in the car and asked the drivers, are you fatigued? Give me a number. About every 5 minutes. Okay. From this experimental design, we can see that the self-report method require regular inquiries, right, with the drivers, which potential disturb they are no more driving, because the data is not the real data. So you result based on this data. I think the results might be misleading, right? This is the driving method, data driving method, the paradigm of the data driving method, right? Because it depends on the data you used, you collected. So that's our solution. The problem is how to develop a non-intrusive and robust method to real-world truck driver fatigue detection. This is our goal. And following this goal, we also design an experiment. We call it the natural driving experiment. Actually, we collected the data from three sensors. The first is, you see, we have a camera. Okay. We have a camera in the vehicle, right? The camera will capture the driver's state. And the second is we have the wristband, customized wristband. The driver should wear the wristband during their driving. A wristband helps us to collect the physiological data. For example, the heart rate, the GSR, also the PPG. The psychological data is from the wristband, right? The second sensor is about the vehicle device, and we deploy the vehicle device to collect the motion information of the vehicles for the speed, acceleration, their position, and so on. After the use, we have 18 no vision features. Remember that the features we divided as a visual and non-visual. The visual features is we capture the features from the camera. We do not use these features. Why? I will explain later, right? So our feature is focused on the non-visual features. These features can be from the psychological features, vehicle features, also the temporal features. For example, how many hours have you rest last night? How many hours have you driving at this time? Okay. So based on these features, we conduct experiment, and we collect 9 local truck drivers, okay, in Guiyang, Guizhou, a local, a rural, a very poor province in China. All the experienced drivers, their age is range from the 31 to 44. And also see that we collect about 17 street trips, and the working hours spent are from half an hour to 10 hours. So it can be seen that the longest trips made by the truck drivers is about 10 hours. Amazing, without sleep, without any rest, without any stopping. So you may wonder why it's impossible in reality. Why? Because you know the situation is different in China. Why? Because the drivers the drivers buy the truck, use all this money. They need the truck to support, to born his child, the whole family. So how to earn the money? You need to drive in the morning, drive at night, drive all the long days. That's why the fatigue detection is very important for the truck drivers. Yeah, in China. So based on the experiment, based on the data, based on the features, and we need a model, right? This model should be different from our statistical model. So the next is how to calibrate the fatigue, right? So because we hadn't have any investigator in the car to ask, are you fatigued? Give me a number. I think it's impossible to reality. So how to calibrate the fatigue? Two renters here. Train, right? They see the video like this, and judge the driver's state based on the criteria. The criteria is here. It's a common in the medicine. Okay, then to validate the samples to the two renters, and they calibrate the fatigue. They level the fatigue and independently, and then agreement was achieved after discussing and comparison. That to validate this library, and we also conduct a reliable experiment, and we employ 6 domain experts, most of from the trial behavior domain, and also 2 professional drivers to relay. And the result says that we have the percentage of agreement reached about 19%. The result is good. And then we have the dependent variable, we have the independent variable. That's the next is how to build a model to predict the driver fatigue state. So the model should be not the traditional statistical model. Because the purpose here is we need the model to have a good have a good performance for prediction for all of samples. Thus, we use the deep learning model. So the first is after data cleaning and after the data fielding, we need some transfer method to procedure our data. We use the sliding window approach. For each window is about 1 minute, right? And the sliding interval is 30 seconds. And based on this sliding window approach, we generate the samples for training. And this data will be that for each slide, 1 minute, right? We have 300 points. For each point, we have 18 features, dimensions, right? Because we select 18 features. So for this time series data, the important is how to make use of the historical information in the data. Right, so we developed a bidirectional long short term BLSTM with attention mechanism to capture the temporal information during our data. Right, specifically the BLSTM, right? The input variables is going to the BLSTM, and then the STM, the features are input into the attention mechanism. Finally, based on a fully connected networks, the model will learn whether the driver is fatigued. Yes, is 1. No, is 0. Right? Actually is the calibration problem. Yes, binary. 1 is fatigue and 0 is non-fatigue. So another problem is that is the data imbalance, right? The problem is very common. I think you also may have similar situations. Data imbalance. Why? Because fatigue driving is represent just a small protection. In our data set, it's less than 3%. So for this information, there are 2 methods. For this data set, there are 2 methods. One method is use sampling and resampling method, right? For example, the smooth. Another is use the cost sensitive learning. We use the cost sensitive learning and we design a cost function, combine the binary cross entropy loss and the intrusive and the Foxy loss. And use this cost sensitive learning, we can capture the fatigue driving, right? So the next stage is to divide the data into training, validation, and testing. It's a common practice, right? And also to reduce the influence of random split, we also use the 5-fold cross validation. So here is the result. We have the model, we have the Y, we have the X, and we have the model, and also the data imbalance issue, right? And the deep learning model. And then we have the result. Also, we also calibrate other deep learning models such as GRU, transformer, CN, right? We also compare different deep learning models, and also you can from the result that can be that the attention by LSTM perform the best, have a good balance between the Precision and recall, a good balance. Both the precision and recall is exceed 19%, right? And the FE score is also the highest, more than 80%. The performance is the best among all the deep learning models, right? So given the model, the another task is how to interpret the model, right? Because we have the black box, but how the black box will judge the driver fatigue or not fatigue is another important issue in social science, I think. Right? Different from the IEEE, I think the nature of our study is why the model could predict the fatigue. So we can also conduct some interpretable machine learning method here. First, right? We need to compare how different computation of features on the model performance. Right? We use the single features, for example, the temporal feature, the vehicle feature, physiological feature, and we also can use the combination of the features. And the result here is very interesting, right? So if you fuse the three types of features, the model is the best. Absolutely, right? Absolutely. Also, the model trained by the temporal vehicular features outperforms that of the driver with psychological features. Why? Because the psychological features, we have just three feature variables. One is about the PPG, the GSR also, and it's about here. Because in our psychological features, we have only three variables. One is the heart rate, another is the GSR, and also the PPG. Right? So the next is the importance ranking of each feature. Right? We understand that we must use the three sources to improve the model performance. Also, we need to understand which feature, single feature, play a dominant role in fatigue driving. So we calculated the decrease in FE score, and we have this result. From this result, it's also some limited finding I will show you. First, about the PPG. The PPG stood at the most important, right? With importance score about 0.111. Another is the vehicle features. For example, the yard rate and the vehicle y-axis acceleration also play an important role here, right? And another finding is that although the single feature of the temporal features, the other three psychological features is not ranking very high, but their total importance was the highest among the three types. Okay. So the next we know the importance score of each feature. The next, how is the relationship between the fatigue driving and each feature? We need some interpretable machine learning method. So we use the partial dependent plot here. Here is the result, right? The x is about the feature, and the y is the probability of fatigue driving. We use the PDP. PDP is the partial dependency plot. It's a common used interpretable machine learning method. Also, you know the line sharp, right? So the PT I think the PT is the most straightforward to use. You see the figure, you know the pattern. So for example, the heart rate has the bell-shaped curve, right? Increase initially and decrease. The peak value is about 67 ppm, right? Also the GSR, from the GSR we can see that the GSR was negatively associated with the driver fatigue state. And also with respect to the PPG, and we can see that a sharp rise is a population of fatigue driving here, right? And the rest band motion wristband motion acceleration because we use the wristband, right, to collect the psychological data, and we also calibrate the wristband motion acceleration to capture the driver's room, driver's hands. So from our results, this variable have no association with the driver fatigue state. Another is about the vehicle features, right? Vehicle features. From these figures, we also have some interesting findings. For example, the truck driver were found to be more likely to be fatigued when driving at a relatively low speed, about 20 to 40% per kilometers per hour, right? Second is about when drivers brake suddenly and abruptly, it is potentially attributed to the fatigue. Why? Because if you drive the car, you have the experience, you feel asleep, and suddenly you alert, right? So you may brake hardly, right? It's an experience. Also, important finding is that the heavily load trucks here, heavily load trucks were more likely to cause driver fatigue, because you need more energy to drive the truck with heavy load. It's reasonable, right? The interpretable machine learning indeed output some reasonable result, right? It's agreed with our experience. Another is about the temper features. Okay, the temper features, and we have the three findings. The first is driving at the middle night. Driving at the middle night, we are more likely to be fatigued. It's the current time here. Middle night is here. It's the hardest. Okay, and also next is the driving time. So the probability of fatigue increased from 2% here, about 2%, to 36% after 4 hours of continuous driving. That's why you see some laws, national laws, prevent the driver from driving more than 4 hours, right? Because driving 4 hours, you are more likely to be fatigued. The probability nearly reaches half, right? And the third is that reduce the working hours here, and also the maintain enough rest hours here, right? If you sleep well, if you don't have many working hours, right? And this factor will help to prevent fatigue driving. So all the findings from the PPT results, all the findings I think is very reasonable, right? So the result is that the black box is not only a black box. We might use some interpretable machine learning method to justify whether the results of the model is reasonable. If the result is very reasonable, and we can also justify the reality of the model, right? It can make the reasonable judgment. So we also compare our model to visual method. So that's why we don't use the visual method, because I will explain it. Because what? Because fatigue driving mostly occur in the middle night because of the dynamic and unconstrained driving environment, the poor lighting conditions, and also the poor similarly the quality of the image is very poor. So to comparison, our method, no vision method with the MIST method, actually the visual fatigue driving method have two types. The first type is use the image captured by the video cameras here. For example, you have the camera in the vehicle and you capture one picture of the driver. From the landmark, we talk about the face and the landmark detector, right? We have the 68 points, right? We know the face area, the mouth, the nose, the eye, right? And based on these features, we can calculate some indicators such as the purpose, such as the black, red. Use these indicators, we can justify whether the driver is fatigued or not.
This is the image best. Okay. So the image best is based on the single image. So to conduct an apple-to-apple comparison, we also sample the image from our videos at the rate of one frame per second, right? So one second we have one image, right? And we commonly use the face and landmark detector such as the MTCN, the OpenCV. I guess most of you know the OpenCV, right? It's very useful toolbox. The main algorithm is open, and it's very easy for use, especially for the video data, right? The OpenCV, also the DD. And we commonly use the face and landmark detectors, and to detect the driver face in our video data. And we have findings amazing. Surprisingly, we find that about 30% of the image could not be found. Right? It's familiar to we want to detect the driver face, the face area. And for the image labeled as fatigue driving, the situation is much worse because most of the fatigue driving occurs at night. So I will show you the picture like this, right? So at night you see this picture is a poor lighting because our camera is the RGB camera. You may ask, why not use the red frame? Right? You may wonder, why not use the red frame? Because I told you that when I come back to the university, the data is already here. The data is already here. The data has collected by the RGB camera. The RGB camera is much cheaper, right? The red frame is also is much expensive. So doing the experiment, I don't participate in this experiment design. So I get the data, but I see, wow, we don't have the red frame camera, and we don't have the RGB deep camera. We also use a deep camera to capture the distance, capture the color, right? We don't have the camera, we just have the RGB. Oh my god. So use the RGB camera. So if you want to develop a visual-based fatigue detection method, I think it's very hard because most of fatigue driving occurs at the middle line, the pearl of the image. You see that like this. So it's hard to detect the driver face, right? So another challenge is about in reality, the driver will have different behavior such as smoking, right? So if the driver is smoking, then you have bring some noise to the driver face detector, and also for example, where the gas, right? So then, okay, the second method based on the visual-based method is about we call this video-based fatigue driving detection method. The paradigm is similar to our models because, for example, we also collect the video of 1 minute. The video of 1 minute, right? And based on the video of 1 minute, and we use some deep learning methods such as CNN, right? We want to extract some features such as focus, such as yamming, such as the hand loading, right? And use these features, we develop a deep learning model. Also, actually, is a classifier, right? The binary outcomes. One is the fatigue, another is normal, and then the video-based fatigue driving detection method is similar to our method. So we conduct a comparison. The results is here. The first line is our method, and the last 4 lines is a method proposed by the previous studies. We need to conduct a comparison, apple-to-apple comparison, right? So the comparison is use other methods and use our data, and we compare the performance of different methods and different solutions, and we find that our method is based on the non-visual features, right? Our method perform the best in terms of the precision, also the record, also the FCC score, right? The FCC. That's why we don't use the camera data to detect driver fatigue because of the poor quality of the RGB camera in the Lane 9. So I'll give you a summary. Firstly, we developed a reliable, right, and continuous. The continuous is here it means that the method is very non-intrusive. Why? Because if you see this picture, also in our experiment, actually the driver would not like to deploy the camera in their vehicles. Why? Because there is a camera at the hand of you, monitor you all the time, right? It's a privacy issue. The driver also didn't resist it very much. So that's why we only have 9 samples, 9 drivers, because only 9 drivers would like to participate in our experiment voluntarily. So this is a privacy issue, right? So in summary, we developed a reliable and continuous approach for truck driver fatigue detection. And the model is calibrated based on natural driving dataset without any disruption on normal driving. Right? We didn't have any investigator sit at the back of the car to ask, are you fatigued? Give me a number. Every 5 or every 10 minutes, right? So it's very natural. The data is very natural. So the data is very natural, and the model is a deep learning model. I think the results should be more reliable for real-world applications, right? And another important quality is that the fusion of physiological and vehicle and temporal features is encouraged in future studies, right? And then we have the model, we have the results, and then the next task is writing a paper. Okay, and they submit a journal, and we submit the journal to the AP, and it's already published. So if you are interested, you can refer to our paper. Okay. So next I will future directions. The first future direction is that actually among all the features, the best mark is the EEG signals, right? So in the future, if we develop a wearable EEG signals, I think we do not need other features from the wristband, from the vehicle, from the tablet. The EEG also will be work here. So how to develop a wearable EEG device, I think is very important in future studies, right? Another is that for real-time applications, we need a model with fewer input variables. I think you have similar feeling, because the more variables you need to collect more data. The more data you need to deploy more sensors, right? So the ideal situation is that if we have the perfect model with fewer input variables, I think it's much ready for use for real-world applications, right? So the lightweight algorithm also is a very popular direction in the machine learning area, right? So the third is about our data. The model transferability is important, because we only have 9 local truck drivers. The data is very, very limited. Most of the drivers are limited to professional drivers and very young and middle age, right? With 9 local drivers, I think it's hard to develop the general model. So we need more data. How? The next step is that after we use the data, we need to have a plan to open our data, right? To share with all of you. If you are interested, you can use this open data to do some research. Not only the fatigue detection, also maybe the destructive detection, also the risk evaluation of the vehicles, because we also have the cameras to capture the real environment. Also, and last is the data, right? The data is very important. So in my experience, right? Collecting the data takes a lot of time. I think you have the same feelings, right? So if you want to collect the data, my suggestion is that you must first figure out your research purpose. Based on your research purpose, you design the procedure to collect the data and use the data, make a full use of the data. Okay, if you use the data, if you have the data, I think it's no worry about the paper, right? The data will tell you some results, good or bad. My supervisor usually told me that non-significance is also a result. If the factor is not significant, you also find some result, right? So if this result is very important, you tell others that we do not need this data for future studies. It's also a conclusion, right? It also has the value, and also it worth of publication. So that's all my first lecture. Thank you.
So, do you have any questions?
Professor, thank you for your great presentation, because I'm also really interested in the real-time driver state detection field. In fact, we three worked on a course project at CAS. It's about the driver state detection. In this project, we try to search various types of driver state data, such as distraction and fatigue. We found that there are many different types of driver distraction data, but
yes,
there are the driver fatigue data is scarce and valuable. So I found the data from your project is such multi-skill data from professional drivers is very valuable. So will you consider release the data for other researchers, because I think your data is really valuable.
Okay. As I said, we have a plan. Plan conditional on what? Conditional we have published the papers. Because collect the data it takes a lot of time. Also the resources to conduct the experiment. It takes about 2 months in Guizhou, Guiyang. I think actually the situation is not so good as in the test, right? In here. Because we also send a student to the experiment. They stay locally about 2 months to collect the data. After collected data, we have to conduct some processing method, such as cleaning, such as fusing. It's about the temper. The most important is about the different data set have different format. For the video, for the wristband, for the vehicle, the data format is totally different. You need to align all the information based on time stamp, right? So it takes a lot of time. So the next we need to have a plan, and we will open the data set after we have published the papers. So this paper is about the fatigue driving, another is about the distracting detection, right? Similar to your suggestion, similar to your research. And after that, we will open our data set.
So after publish that distraction paper?
Yeah. Because it's actually totally for our, I also have a PhD student. So the PhD student relying on this data set, right? So if no papers, I think it's hard for him to complete his PhD study. I think the situation is similar to yours, right?
Yeah, it takes a lot of work.
Yes, that's true.
Hi, Professor. Thank you for your presentation. It's really nice work. And I have several questions because I found we have some job which is a little bit similar. Even though I'm not doing this for tip, I'm not doing like pedestrian safety action. So one of the questions that I face is like when we have a data set that is not open source at this moment. So when we are submit to a journal, so we somehow need to prove that the labeling is trustworthy. We need to prove it because it's not open source, it's not a baseline data set. So by that way, so I saw in the presentation, like you mentioned about we have used to train labelers and then evaluate by 2 professors or like evaluated by another group. So like my question is, do you have some strategies when you submit a paper to reduce the because some reviewer will think this is quite like hard to trust you. So
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
think how to
I
improve the trustworthy of the original data set when you try to create your own data set for the testing?
Yeah, a good question. That's a key point. How to calibrate the fatigue using. So actually, in reality, in our data set, it's very hard to use objective methods, such as if you have the EEG and we just use the EEG, it's enough. We don't have the EEG signal, right? So and we don't have the investigator sit at the back of the car to ask the driver report their KSS value. So the only way is to judge the fatigue levels by the raters. So we train the raters with some judgment criteria. The criteria is based on the medicine research. So how to
Cool.
you see, like this. So we try our best to reduce, to ensure the robustness of our labels, reliability, right? So we have the video, and as I said, the other two methods is impossible to use, and the only way is to use trained raters, and we indeed invite two trained raters to observe the videos independently. So as I said, each time slide is about 1 minute. So the 1 minute you have to give a level, fatigue or no fatigue. It's also a very huge work, right? Because I have about 2 months driving videos and 9 local drivers, and I think this work will take about 10 or maybe 3 weeks, about 3 weeks. 2 renters, our students, okay, they learn the judgment criteria is still here, right? And then they left our samples to validate. We must validate, but to validate, we also invent 6 domain experts. That's why we need to relay. We need to justify whether the consistency of the labels, right? So we need to relay. And we just think random sample, a subset of the sample. And we invite the domain experts and our 2 professional drivers to relay. And we compare the result. So if all the people, the students, the trained students, the domain experts, the professional drivers, if their agreement percentage is very high, it gives us the result that the lab should be reliable, right? I think it's the only reasonable method here. Because the fatigue driving is actually the physiological phenomenon. So as I say, the best feature is the EEG signal. Right? So you don't have the EEG signal, you have to based on the observed behavior to watch the better raters slide by slide. It indeed takes a lot of time and efforts, I think. That's our chair. I think you may give some instructions for your research.
Thank you. So when there's a disagreement, so the majority will be picked, right?
Yes, that's true. So if there is a disagreement, the majority vote will be chosen.
I see. Thank you. And I have the second question and last question. So I found that the most of the evaluation is based on the F1 score. So F1 score is like a balance between the prediction and recall. So but we extend further into the original definition of the recall. So my point is that I'm wondering if in this situation we need to focusing on recall, because the recall value shows like, if, for example, we have 100% of 100 cases of fatal, so 82% means that only 82% of the fatals will be detected. So which means that when the recall is higher, the missing case will be smaller. So my question is why the F1 score is picking as the standard for the evaluation rather than the recall here?
Okay, so that's a good question. Okay, actually we need to give a balance between the precision and the recall. So the recall is very important, I guess, because we need to correctly detect the fatigue samples, right?
Yeah.
And for the precision, it's also important because remember that if I detect the driver to be fatigued, then I give a reminder to the driver. The driver thinks that I'm not fatigued. So your system is not reliable. You give the false alarm, right? I don't trust it. I will shut it down. That's the problem in reality, right? So you need to do a balance. Also, we want to keep a high value of the record. At the same time, we want to have a good balance, good performance in the precision, right? So there is a balance. So I guess if you also train the machine learning deep learning model, you have similar trade-off. So here, the more random is the FE score. That is clear balance between these two indicators. That's that's from the reality, from the reliability of the system, also from the predictability of the system. Because you want to make the system more reliable, also the more more friendly to use.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, I noticed you mentioned we have 18 dimensions for the features. So one of them is sleep quality. Is sleep quality included?
In sleep quality, actually we didn't have any. For sleep quality, it's about the rest hours. Because we just have this data set. Because for example, if you start driving today, and our students will ask you to fill a form. The form you record how many hours you have sleep last night, and how many hours you have the work.
I was wondering how to reflect the sleep quality. So if it's included, so.
Okay, that's a good question. I also have no idea. I guess there should be some research about to qualify the sleep quality. Because here our purpose is to develop the fatigue detection system, right? My task is to make full use of data, and we also use this. The data is here. The data is here. So your purpose is how to develop a fancy model. I call it fancy model to make full use of data and to have a good prediction performance for all of sample, right? It's our task. And sleep quality, I think is also very important research topic. It's about the driving behavior, right? So if you do not have a high sleep quality, I think you will have a bad state when you drive. Not only the fatigue, also the detraction, right?
Maybe one last question.
I find from your background as you introduced one literature review as self-reported, and the fatigue has 9 levels. But in your study, I think there are only 2 levels, fatigue or not fatigue.
Yes.
So do you think in the future maybe we can consider more levels of fatigue? Because I think different levels maybe have different hazard levels.
Yeah, very good point.
Yes.
I got it. Yes. Actually, it's also the drawback of our study. So the one drawback I think is how to calibrate the fatigue. So the analysis of the fatigue levels, actually we have different fatigue levels, right? The normal, the slight fatigue, and the deep fatigue, and the extremely fatigue. That's why the KSS scale is very popular in study. Also in our driving simulation study, because it's more reasonable and give you more information about the fatigue, right? We have different levels. Actually, we have 3 levels. The first is alert, and the other is moderate fatigue, and the other is severe fatigue. Actually, 3 levels in driver simulator experiment. But in our study, as I have mentioned, calibrating the fatigue levels is I think it's a very challenging task, right? So based on the eyes, so if you see the video, it's very hard to justify the levels of the fatigue. We have three, for example, we have 3 levels, 1, 2, 3, a given level. So it's very hard to justify based on the eye. Renters, I think it's a very challenging task. So we also search some papers in the IEEE ITS, right? So the fatigue driving is actually it's a very traditional topic. And I also read about 60 papers about like this. I search one by one, right? To write this paper, I have to conduct a literature review, and I see many papers have been published at IEEE. And similar to ours, they also calibrate the fatigue as binomial outcome. One is for the fatigue and 0 is for the normal. So if you see the paper studies, you find it's a similar paradigm. Why? Because you know to calibrate the fatigue based on video data is very, very difficult, right? That's why I call for the EEG device. So if we have the wearable EEG device, right, we can study the driving behavior. I think more easier, much easier. Okay.
Last question.
We also have the second lecture.
Quick one. Follow from her comments. I was wondering, have you encountered the imbalanced data issue, like the video data set for those categorized as a fatigue driving, like the proportion of the for categorized as fatigue, and their proportion must be imbalanced.
Yeah.
So how?
Yeah,
so your model.
Imbalanced.
Yeah, how's your deal with this issue in your modeling work? If we have multiple fatigue levels in the near future, this issue will be more serious. So that will affect your F1 score research.
Actually, if you look at the machine learning books, you will find there are 2 ways. The first is resampling, and the data augmentation. For example, you use a smooth. Right? Use smooth algorithm, or you use a GNN to generate some new samples.
This one, did you?
No, we do not use this one. Okay. And that's because because our data is a video data. It's a 1 minute video, right? So it's hard to generate a new data based on the video data. So we use the cost sensitive learning is here. Here we modify the cost function. We give a balance between these 2. So what as you can find in our papers. Or we give more weights to the fatigue levels. And this parameter also is based on the training. The data will tell you how to assign a weight between the different those types. I think that this approach is much natural to use in our data, because as I mentioned, the data is video. It's for 1 minute video, right? It's really very hard to generate some new data set. Use the TNN or use the smooth.
Thank you. So we can